Welcome back, everyone. This is the Fantasy Facts Podcast brought to you by Fantasy Data. This week, Seth and I are talking Week 3 injuries, fantasy implications, and Week 4 waiver wire targets. Seth, what you have a fancy sheet you put together. Give the folks a preview.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at what I call percent of offense because, well, it's how much of the offense the player was involved in. And so we're going to be looking at beyond snap data, beyond targets, beyond target share and rush share and stuff like that. We're going to be looking at how much of the actual offense ran through this player. And that's what in what I've seen really leads to fantasy points.
And it's important because it's going to help you decide, is this guy legit or not?
Mm-hmm. Are they going upwards? Are they going down?
Exactly.
Yep.
We'll get to that in just a minute.
These are the Fantasy Facts with your hosts, Pat Loftus and Seth Keller.
All right, here we go. Fantasy Facts Podcast brought to you by Fantasy Data. Make sure you're giving the show a follow. We're at the Fantasy Facts. I'm at Dynasty_Pat. Seth is at FF, the at-home dad. We have an action-packed, information-filled show for you. You can see Seth's spreadsheet there in the background. It's color-coded. It all came from Fantasy Data. So make sure you head on over to fantasydata.com. You can use our promo code FACTS, FAQS. 20% off that subscription purchase will get you all that fancy data you see there in the background. And again, we're talking week 3, week 4. If your team is not doing well and you want a shot at maybe winning a little bit this year, head on over to Underdog. 100% deposit match up to your initial deposit of $100 using our code FACTS. That's FAQS.
And even if your team is doing pretty good, you can still play Pick'em on Underdog. Oh, yeah. And I not only did my Cowboys win the Monday night game against the Giants.
Let's not talk about Sunday night or Monday night. Just awful football. Let's not talk about those games.
It was a pretty good defensive game for the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys' defense is a lot better than people have given them credit for. They're leading the league in sacks. Come on.
The best part of it was McAfee on the Manning cast because McAfee's hilarious.
Okay, well, whatever, Pat. Not only did my Cowboys win, but I also won a little bit of money playing Pick'em on Underdog. So if you want to check that out, go ahead, jump in there. You're picking whether or not a person is going to be higher or lower in a specific stat. Could be fantasy points, could be rushing yards, could be combined rushing and receiving yards. It is a great time. Trayvon Diggs picked me up by getting that last minute interception to kind of seal the game because I was like, Daniel Jones is going to throw at least one pick in this game. At least one.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't, but he threw one.
Here we go. Good enough.
Good enough.
You have another one for the opening question, correct?
Oh yeah, no, I always come prepared.
Always
like a Boy Scout. I'm like a Boy Scout.
You are better prepared than I am.
It's time to crack one open with the opening question.
That is how it's done.
That was a real good one.
All right, opening question this week comes from at Armchair QB FFB, and I chose this one because you tweeted this out about Derrick Henry. So, better option for the rest of the season in a 0.5 PPR league: Derrick Henry or Joe Mixon?
That's a really good question, and it leads into a little bit of the news and notes because Joe Mixon is dealing with an ankle injury and is kind of day-to-day with it. Both of them are just such integral parts of their offense, and both of their offenses have not been good. Weeks 1 and 2, they both got better week 3. I am leaning towards Mixon rest of the season, even with 0.5 PPR. As of right now, I'm leaning Mixon, and I think the deciding factor for me is I really don't like. I don't like the Titans' offense. I don't like their offensive line. They lost Tyler Lewan. Like there's just there's injuries all over the place. There's just bad offensive line play. It's all over the place. So I'm gonna go with Joe Mixon and hoping that he is not severely injured.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm leaning more actually towards Derrick Henry than I am Joe Mixon, mainly because that offensive line in Cincinnati does not look good. They're not protecting Joe Burrow. It's been difficult to watch, to be honest. And it's a hard time trusting that offensive line to get better and get healthier throughout the year. I know they brought in some free agents and they might mesh and gel a little bit, but it's just a difficult time trusting that offensive line in Cincinnati. Now that's not to say Derrick Henry has been like this, this fantasy football godsend this year. He's been very mediocre at best. Right, the guy that you drafted, who you expected to have these monster numbers, has been kind of just meh. Now, week 3 was different. We saw the Joe Mixon, the Derrick Henry of old, and I think that is kind of the tipping point. We're going to see more weeks like that out of Derrick Henry for the rest of 2022 than we saw week 1 and week 2. Yeah. The usage is clearly there. It's just what is he going to do, with the opportunities. He's trending in the right direction, right? 33%, 23%, 44% for usage for percent of weekly offense, right? Yeah. Whereas Joe Mixon, yes, Mixon's dealing with an injury, so his week 3 percentage is slightly lower. It's the same thing with his fantasy points, but I'm going to lean Derrick Henry for the rest of the season over Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and I don't think there's too much of a wrong way to go with this question. I'm pretty sure, like, if you have them, you're playing them. I'm wondering if there's like some kind of like trade implications that they're trying to think their way through on that question. Because if you have Derrick Henry and you have Joe Mixon, well, you have your two starting running backs for the season there. So I don't think there's too much kind of separating them out. I think they're both going to end up finishing out this season pretty well. So
agreed. All right, to the news desk.
Fresh from the Fantasy Facts news desk.
All right, week 3 come and gone. We saw, shocker, a lot of injuries to a lot of big name players. Let's run through these quickly. We'll start at the quarterback position. Mac Jones, it's a left ankle.
Look pretty.
Yeah, left high ankle sprain, left ankle, out multiple weeks. So the keys are being turned over to Brian Hoyer. That New England offense was mediocre. I mean, nothing special. But I mean, anytime the quarterback goes down, right, you're going to see a negative impact on the skill players, on the receivers. Jacoby Myers, who we'll talk about, who was out last week. Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry. It wasn't a good situation to begin with. I think the pass catchers will see a decrease, but Damien Harris, Ramondre Stevenson will see an uptick, and we finally got the game that we were expecting out of Ramondre Stevenson last week. So, I'm not picking up Hoyer, and I'm downgrading the pass catchers, upgrading the running backs in New England.
Yeah, and I don't think there's much that you're really liking out of New England. I mean, even when Mac Jones was playing, he wasn't good for fantasy purposes. he didn't do very many favors for his wide receivers. Like he had Jacoby, who had a decent week. Nelson
PPR,
Aguilar
yeah.
had a decent week. Devontae Parker had a decent week. And slightly better than decent because they were 18, 23, 20. So, like, those are pretty good weeks for your wide receivers. But there really wasn't any consistency out there. And I agree. I don't think there's much that you can get out of this offense, except for in the likes of Ramondre Stevenson and Damien Harris, who, both of them were involved in this past week also. So hopefully it's not this seesaw back and forth of it's Ramondre on odd weeks and Damien and even weeks. That's the worst case scenario for fantasy managers.
Yeah. All right, let's go down to Miami. Tua Tagovailoa. So they're calling it a back injury. He cleared concussion protocol. It was a mess, really.
Yeah.
Tua going down is big. I know the Dolphins are playing Thursday Night Football against the Bengals. So technically Tua was listed as a DNP yesterday. I didn't check or anything of any practice reports for Tua.
I think they estimated he would be they estimated it did not practice for today also.
Okay. So if you have a better option at quarterback, I'd probably roll out that. And with that, you're going to see a significant decrease in Waddle, in Hill, in Gesicki. I'm not even going to talk about the Miami running backs because what a dumpster fire those have been. So if Tua plays, it's probably best to temper expectations. If he doesn't play, then it's a downgrade to all of the wide receivers and Gesicki. I'm not saying don't start him, but you're not going to get those monster numbers. You're not going to get, 40 points out of Waddle, 42 points out of, you're just not going to see that without Tua at quarterback.
Yeah, and I think your best case scenario is one of those wide receivers pops off. Maybe this is an opportunity for Chase to get more involvement. Like he got saved by a touchdown this past week. Otherwise he has less than a 10-point game again. But yeah, I think that you might get a little bit more out of the running game with somebody besides Tua in there. But again, if we're looking at other options, there's a whole lot of quarterbacks that I'd rather play than them. You're probably not going to be in a position where you can sit Waddle or Tyreek.
No.
But they're definitely not going to be, they're not going to be guys you want to target. Yeah.
Right. Let's move up to Detroit. We'll talk about Deandre Swift. It's questionable due to an ankle injury, but now it's a shoulder sprain. Probably referring to an AC joint, which Swift did injure last year. Looking at him potentially missing a couple of weeks. Lions have a week 6 bye, so let's just assume they're going to shut him down until week 7 just to be on the cautious side. This is a huge boost to Jamal Williams, who is a guy that probably the second or third best option to pick up on the waiver wire this week, or at least a check for, in my opinion. This is a huge boost to Jamal Williams because he has been a pretty integral part of this offense, even with a healthy Deandre Swift.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the way you want to play this is if Jamal is somehow out on waivers still, which I kind of doubt he is, he's definitely worth scooping up.
It's worth looking into, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely worth checking. Check it out. Most likely he's probably not going to be available for you, but check it out, see if he's there. A deep option that I heard some people kind of throwing out there, but Craig Reynolds filled in last year admirably. If you're desperate at running back, if you did like a real heavy 0 RB approach and you need to start, now's your time to start feasting on running back injuries.
Yep.
So if you're in that situation, taking a stab at a guy like Craig Reynolds, who could get a decent amount of run, and it seems like Detroit is in a spot where they just want to run the ball. So whether they're running it with Swift or Jamal, maybe with Swift going down, they keep Craig Reynolds in there, and they keep running a relatively even split. So it's worth a flyer in deep leagues. I'm not dumping anybody major to go out and get them, but it's worth a shot, especially in deeper leagues.
Agreed. And the team that the Lions played this past Sunday, Minnesota, they lost Dalvin Cook to a left shoulder dislocation. Cook said he's hopeful to play in Week 4 while wearing the shoulder harness. So Cook and the Vikings play early Sunday in London, so you'll get plenty of time to make a decision. Alexander Madison is the clear pickup here, and probably the top of the waiver wire here because of what he's done in the past when Cook has been out. Again, check the waiver wire for a guy like Madison. If he's there, you grab him and you roll him out. Because again, even when he being Cook has been healthy, Madison has produced. So, Madison has looked good this year. He filled in admirably. I like Alexander Madison as the top waiver option this week at the running back position.
Yeah, I agree. Madison is definitely up there. Jamal Williams is definitely up there.
And I just realized this now, another NFC North ankle injury. David Montgomery, it's a right ankle ankle injury. This is from at Courtney R. Cronin. David Montgomery is still considered day-to-day. The Bears are calling Montgomery's injury an ankle, not an ankle and knee as originally stated. And how about Khalil Herbert?
Oh, yeah.
Depending on the severity of the injury to Montgomery, Khalil Herbert is making a strong case to be the top waiver option as well.
Yeah,
Herbert came in and scored 31 points, 30.9 points this past week.
Yeah, that's another one where
it looked good doing it.
Yeah, that's another one where really depending on your league, I saw some people, tweeting about a popular fantasy analyst talking about ownership percentages for Khalil Herbert, and talking about him being a waiver wire grab. And the fact of the matter is if you're listening to our show right now, Khalil Herbert's probably picked up in your leagues because you're probably a little bit more invested than the average like free ESPN league type of guy or gal, right? Mm-hmm. So he's probably picked up. But again, same thing with all three of these top guys. It's check the waiver, see if they're out there. If they are, they're worth bidding a significant amount of your fab to grab, especially with how well Khalil Herbert played. He might usurp David Montgomery in that backfield, which to me puts him as the number one option because I don't think Jamal Williams passes a healthy Swift. I don't think an Alexander Madison passes a healthy Cook. Now they're going to fill in, great in their absence, but Herbert could possibly take over Montgomery's role. Granted, the Bears offense is just kind of woof now, but it's definitely a great option there.
Final running back injury to discuss, and we hinted at it earlier, is Joe Mixon. He didn't play in the fourth quarter due to an ankle injury. After the game, Zach Taylor said the ankle was a little sore. Samaje Perine did have some success, so they just rolled with him. Again, quick turnaround. Bears. Bengals, Dolphins play Thursday night, so expect to see Mixon miss some practice time, but Zach Taylor did say that Mixon should be good to go for Thursday night. It might be a good idea to check to see if Perine is out there. Ankle injuries can linger. It's a quick turnaround. Maybe they don't want to risk the future of Joe Mixon for a Thursday night football game, but P. Ryan is a good handcuff here just in case.
Yeah, goodish. I don't see him nearly as valuable as the other ones, but goodish.
A good-ish for fourth option here. All right, let's move to wide receivers, and this one was tough to watch because he's been through a shitload the last couple of years. Sterling Shepard, torn ACL, out for the year. It was the last offensive play for the Giants. Non-contact injury. Just terrible to see.
And watching it, he legit is just like barely moving, and then all of a sudden he's like thunk, and just, it legit looks like one of the gifs of like sniper get down. It just it just is so horrible. Like seeing it and knowing that he's done for the season. It was on that last play, but watching it, you're like, how did it even happen? It doesn't look like there's any of that kind of like twisting or trauma that normally happens with like an ACL where the one part of the leg goes this way and it's not supposed to you just didn't see any of that.
That turf monster got him.
Yeah.
So now the Giants are down to basically me and you playing wide receiver this week.
I'm ready, Coach. Put me in.
It's not pretty. Maybe Tony is back. Maybe Wandale is back. You got Kenny Galladay running his mouth saying he wants to play more, and then he goes out and just flat out drops a couple balls. It was not pretty. So if your name isn't Saquon Barkley, I'm not starting you on the Giants. Bellinger looked okay for a rookie tight end, but I'm still not. He's not somebody I'm comfortable rolling out and starting. Barkley. It's Barkley, and then it's. Oh boy.
And then it's either Richie James or David Bellinger if you're again in a very deep league and you are very desperate. In one of my leagues, somebody did talk about how their opponent traded Jeff Wilson and a pick to get David Bellinger to be able to put him in for the Monday night game. And then beat him. Daniel Bellinger, and then beat him
with Bellinger.
It
was
by
a solid
decimals.
He had 8 PPR points. Bellinger caught all 4 of his targets for 40 yards. So
which is an okay. It's not great. It's nothing to write home about, but that's an okay output for a tight end, and especially one that if you started with Cole Kmet and week 1, week 2. You would have loved 8 points. In the league where I took Cole Kmet, I would have loved to have 8 points from Bellinger.
Kyle Pitts owners.
Yes, Kyle Pitts again. If you had him week 1 and week 2, right there, Bellinger was a 8 points is a great option. But desperation makes you do desperate things.
We're back to Detroit to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Ankle sprain, right ankle sprain. They're calling it week to week. Tom Pelissero, the results on his ankle were encouraging, but the team plans to be cautious. So this just moved Chark, Reynolds, and Hockenson up a little bit, in my opinion. Probably Chark the most, then Reynolds, because he's got some chemistry with Goff.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say though is he was able to get back on the field and able to still make a handful of catches after the ankle injury. So to me, that is either kudos to the doctors that are shooting him up with the extra pain pills in the moment, or promising that he can come in this week, get wrapped up, get shot up with cortisone, and be able to play. And so if you have him, you're playing him. He's just been too good to not play. Even with twisting his ankle in week 3, he still put up 13 points, 13 PPR points, which, it's nothing compared to the 39 he put up in week 2. But that's still, wide receiver 2-ish type point range.
Yeah. Let's stay in the NFC North. We're going to go to Green Bay. Sammy Watkins hamstring strain placed on IR, so he'll be out the next month. I mean, death taxes and Sammy Watkins on the IR. I mean, at least he made it through week 3 this year. Lazard is back and healthy. Doubs looks good. Tanyan is trending in the right direction. I don't think Green Bay is going to miss Sammy Watkins. It just makes me more excited for a healthy Alan Lazard, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Lazard come in. It's nice to see him get a touchdown. I'm excited for what it's going to do for the rookies. Like, this now creates opportunity for Dobbs, especially Dobbs, because Dobbs looked good in this past week.
Mm-hmm.
He put up 21 fantasy points. Like, that's phenomenal. Watson was out. There was a whole lot of people out, but I'm excited to see how does Dobbs continue taking those steps. And he may be your he may be your number one waiver wire option. He's definitely
agreed.
Definitely up there
agree.
for your top wide receiver at least.
Yeah. So I got a question for you then, because this came up in one of my leagues. Hunter Renfrow was dropped. Renfrow or Dobbs?
Man, the Raiders' offense just has not been very good.
I know.
Let me do a quick little thing right now.
You think
Let me do a quick little thing right now, because I want to see what was his involvement.
Go ahead.
Leading up to that injury,
I won't touch the show sheet. You look that up.
I mean, he honestly he was decently involved, but he didn't score any points. Like, he was targeted plenty. He just didn't get any PPR points out of it. And, granted, in week 2, he scored more than Devontae Adams, which isn't saying much because they were both at 9 and 10 points. But, man, it's tough with a player of kind of Renfro's year last year to not go with Renfro.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to go with the shiny new box, mystery box, and go with Dobbs.
A boat's a boat. A mystery box could be anything.
It could be anything.
It could even be a boat.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, I'm going to go with Dobbs in that one.
Okay. All right. Let's move down to Tampa Bay. Julio Jones, PCL sprain. He's likely to return in week 4. So that explains the injury, explains missing week 2 and week 3. I mean, it's Julio Jones. He's like our age. I'm not expecting much, to be honest. All right, New Orleans, 2 injuries here. Michael Thomas has a toe injury. It is on the same leg as the ankle injury that kept him out for last year, but it's not serious, or they're not considering it serious. The other wide receiver here is Jarvis Landry, ankle injury week to week. He is probably looking at, I mean, it's early in the week. They play in London this Sunday, so it's monitor. Be aware that these guys are playing early Sunday, so be aware of the London game and be ready to pivot because
hopefully you get some forewarning on whether or not they make the flight with the team, and that's how you get. You get a jump start on like, okay, I know that Jarvis Landry didn't fly. I know I can switch him out, which you're probably not playing Landry. But maybe Michael Thomas, like the toe injury gets aggravated this week. He's not going to fly with the team. All right, good. Hopefully I went out and I got Chris Olave.
Because all I'm hearing is Chris Olave.
Beautiful.
To the moon.
Yes. And,
all right,
Olave, if you didn't get Olave last week, and somehow he's still out there, you need to go get him now.
He is the better waiver wire.
He had 19% of the offense in week 2. And just for comparison, Michael Thomas was at 13. In week 3, he was at 18%. And again, Michael Thomas, again, with the injury, but at 7%. He is becoming the focal point of that New Orleans offense. Especially in the receiving game, for a wide receiver to be around 20% of the offense is absolutely phenomenal.
That's good. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, finally, AJ Green, bone bruise. He is out for week 4 and likely out for multiple weeks. Another blow to that Cardinals offense. Rondell Moore should be back in the next few weeks. DeAndre Hopkins is coming back after that 6-game suspension. But for now, it's Kyler Moore, it's Hollywood Brown, and it's Zach Ertz, and maybe sprinkle in a little Greg Dortch here and there.
Yeah.
Hopefully you listen to us, and you did go out and grab him.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Because he's back-to-back, 12 and 13-point half PPR games with a touchdown in there. So look for Dortch to continue at least until Rondell Moore and DeAndre Hopkins come back. It's been a long day, guys. Sorry. I'm struggling today.
You're doing it, Pat. You're doing a great job. All right.
Really doing it this time, Harry.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Dortch and the price you got him at, but yeah. Hopefully you got Dortch when we said, because he's a great flex option, wide receiver 3 option, especially until Hopkins comes back. And then we'll see what happens with that offense.
Yeah. I like that offense a lot more when Hopkins is back. I think everyone does too. It's not a hot take. I think everyone's going to like that offense when Hopkins comes back. All right.
I think so too.
So that does it to kind of recap injuries and fantasy implications from week 3, moving to week 4. Seth has his fancy Google sheet that he's been working on here in the background, clicking away on.
Always clicking away.
You can see it moving there in the background. All right, what do we? Where do you want to take this, Seth?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of highlight a handful of guys, and predominantly running backs and wide receivers, in terms of usage, right? Because that's one of the things that we're constantly looking at. Because if you've listened to me in any context over the past couple of years, I argue the point that fantasy points are not a normal distribution. So looking at things like average points per game is helpful, but it's also not the best thing you can do because it's not a normal distribution. Your average isn't at the peak of that distribution. It's actually skewed. And so what I try and do is I try and look at, like, what's the usage? And even usage can be skewed at times. But for the most part, the players' usage and their fantasy points line up pretty well. So I want to kind of touch on, and we'll probably spend maybe 15, 20 minutes looking at a handful of guys here that either their usage and fantasy points aren't matching up yet, or guys that are trending in the right direction. And so I think one of the obvious names for usage and not matching up to their scores so far is Christian McCaffrey. So Christian McCaffrey has the highest average, the highest average percent of offense. And so when I say percent of offense, it's like out of all of the team offensive plays, were they targeted? Were they the one running the ball, or were they the one passing the ball? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so Christian McCaffrey has the highest average percent of offense over the first 3 weeks. Week 1, 28%. Week 2, 34%. Week 3, 47% of Carolina's offense ran through Christian McCaffrey. So close to 50% of the offense. The ball was either in McCaffrey's hands or intended to be in McCaffrey's hands. But his fantasy points, he's yet to top 17 fantasy points, which 17 fantasy points for a running back is right around the RB1 cusp. And so are we going to continue seeing CMC as a just getting a ton of work but no fantasy points? Or are we going to see a change here, Pat, where we see some of that volume turn into fantasy points?
No, the volume is definitely going to turn into fantasy points. With that,
is it going to happen week 4? maybe.
I want to say yes. Here's the thing. I don't know if it's going to be with Baker Mayfield. Like, I like Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like Baker Mayfield has been the quarterback there that everyone thought he was going to be. And maybe this is more, we should talk about DJ Moore more so than CMC, but I'm just not seeing it, right? They're getting McCaffrey involved. He's just not producing. But I don't know if that's McCaffrey's fault, if that's Mayfield's fault, if that's the offensive line's fault, if it's Matt Rule. I mean, part of me wants to just blame Matt Rule for everything down there. But
I mean,
with that type of usage, I mean, like you said, he is almost 50% of the offense in Carolina. But as far as running backs go, he's the run, and I mean, he's right on that cusp. He scored 46 PPR points so far. That's right now. That's RB 11. If I'm looking at your stats right, he's not going to finish that low. The production's going to come back. It's just when.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and part of that production, part of that RB 11 is the classic 0 RB versus, every other strategy of. He's just a consistently okay back so far. Like, he hasn't been great, and he's just creating fantasy points just off of sheer volume. There's no efficiency in it. There's no pop. There's no, there's no electricity to that score. And just to put it into a bit of perspective, in week 3, CMC had a greater percentage of the offense than Baker Mayfield. Yeah. They're literally taking the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hands to put it into Christian McCaffrey's hands. And so, usually like quarterbacks are in the 60, 80, percent of the offense type of range. Baker Mayfield was all the way down to 42%. So I honestly think it's a little bit of everything down there. I think that team is just kind of all over the place.
They're just kind of they're flailing around. I think a lot of it comes back to the inconsistencies at the head coach position. I think a lot of it can be placed on Matt Rule. And I think the best thing for that franchise is to move forward without Matt Rule. I don't know who's out there that could take over. But I think Matt Rule is not the best option for Carolina.
Yeah, I think you meant be onto something there.
It's not that difficult.
No.
All right.
Do you got somebody that you want to bring up? Or?
I kind of want to dive into the New England running back situation a bit more.
Okay.
So I've got New England pulled up across. Across 3 weeks right now, Damien Harris is averaging 22% of the weekly offense. Ramondre Stevenson is right behind him at 20%. Damien Harris has been above 21% for every game of the season. Ramondre Stevenson, 17, 16, 25%. Now, we saw the uptick in scoring last week from Ramondre, 20.1 PPR points. This looks like a pretty dead even split. Unless someone gets hurt, you can't in confidence say it's a Damien Harris week, it's a Ramondre Stevenson week, right? Because Harris has been more consistent, scoring 7, 16, and 12, whereas Stevenson gave you 4, 6, and 20.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And so to break down the percentage of offense a little bit more, the ways they're getting it, right? So in week 1, the split was pretty much even right down the middle. Damien Harris had 9 rushing attempts, 3 targets, 2 receptions. Ramondre Stevenson had 8 attempts, 2 targets, 2 receptions. Neither one of them had great fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
Week 2 is where we see a little bit of a discrepancy. We have Damien Harris at 15 attempts, 2 targets, 2 receptions. The kicker, though, scored a touchdown and had 71 yards rushing. Ramondre in week 2 had 9 attempts, no touchdown, but 2 targets and a reception. So the big swing in points there was the additional attempts leading to extra yardage and that extra touchdown. In week 3, again, the split was pretty even. 12 rushing attempts for Ramondre, 11 for Damien Harris. Both of them walk away with a touchdown on this one. But in this one, you end up with 5 targets, 4 receptions for Stevenson, and only 3 and 2 for Damien Harris. And you also get a lot more yardage. This time, Ramondre is the one with 70 rushing yards, an additional 28 receiving yards. That bumps him up to that 20-point, puts him into that RB1 tier. Good old Ramondre. So I think we are going to get a little bit of this constant back and forth, or at least a relatively even split, and then you're hoping you're picking the guy that has the touchdown.
You can't look and say, well, Ramondre is getting more targets. He has 1 more target than Damien Harris. It's 9 to 8. Right, receptions are about even. Rushing touchdowns, I think Harris has the edge 2 to 1. It's your typical running back by committee. Yeah, and I can't in good confidence say to start one or the other every week. You're not going to start both of them.
Yeah, but
this is such a muddled backfield that it's almost a void until there's some clarity regarding a target or a touch hog or an injury.
Yeah. And especially for the next couple of weeks with Mac Jones being out, I don't want to start either of these two if I don't have to right away.
No.
Because there's 2 ways that I see this going. The one way is that Brian Hoyer is just handing the ball off. And in that case, I want Damien Harris because I feel like he's going to get more of the goal line work and he's going to get he's going to edge out Stevenson in rushing attempts. Now,
the schedule coming up for New England, they're at Green Bay, home versus the Lions, at the Browns, home versus the Bears, at the Jets, home versus the Colts. Then we get into the bye week. So that the week 10. It's entirely possible that Mac Jones is held out until after the bye.
Yeah, I think the one team that is slightly frightening there is the Colts with the run defense, but other than that,
but that's 6 weeks from 6 weeks from now. A lot's going to change. There's not a whole lot here that is really scares me, and that's also a negative thing because you're going to they've got an easy test this week, an easy run defense this week. I'm going to fire up Ramondre Stevenson. He goes out and gets you 2.8 points.
Yeah,
But I think for me it's an avoid situation until we get some sort of clarity.
Yeah. The other way that offense could go though, if it's not just handing the ball off to Damien Harris, it could be one of these check down offenses. Kind of like what Flacco's been doing where and I don't think we're going to see the Pats throw the ball 60 times, 50, 60 times, but just everything is underneath. Everything is to either a wide receiver that's shallow or a running back that's in the flat. And so if it leans that way, then Ramondre becomes the better play because he's the more active receiving back, has a little bit more of the receiving chops, even though, like you said, the split currently is not that significant in terms of targets. That is what Ramondre is supposed to be doing for them. So I think this week, for me, it's a hold them out, wait and see what type of offense we get out of the Patriots, and then go from there. Readjust at that point.
It's going to be a weekly conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, first I need to put my sheet all back into order because you got me all discombobulated.
Talking about the Patriots.
I know. I actually want to talk a little bit about the Green Bay backfield, because that's another one that it's another one that people wanted to be right on in the beginning of the year, and I know it's one that I kind of staked my claim on Aaron Jones, and it's a pretty interesting set when you're looking at percent of offense, where AJ Dillon is actually averaging more and hasn't been under Aaron Jones in terms of percent offense until week 3, and it was by 1 point, 1 percentage point, 24 to 25, really 1.6 percentage points. But in terms of his production, though, he's only at 33 PPR points in total. He's only had one game in the double digits, and that was week 1 where he put up 20, whereas Aaron Jones has 10, 32, and everybody kind of sucked in week 3 where they both were at 5.
Yeah.
Almost 6. They round up to 6 in week 3, so we'll give them 6.
Yeah, I mean, all the 0 RB truthers in week 1 were really patting themselves on the back with AJ Dillon. You know, AJ Dillon went out and scored 20 points. You know, dominated the touches. We were all right, and then flipping Aaron Jones goes off in week 2, and then week 3 they both kind of lay an egg. I mean, week 3 just in general just not a good week. I guess we were spoiled in week 2 with how good some of those games were. But week 3, it just was not a very good week for football, especially that Green Bay game where you get a whopping 11.5 points out of Dillon and Jones. This is a little bit easier for me than it is for the New England backfield, because both of these guys have been getting a steady amount of run every week. So I have no problem firing up Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon every week, because I'm confident that they're both going to see a heavy amount of involvement in the offense, whether it's, you know, on the ground or through the air. You know, just looking at some, you know, Dillon outrushed Jones in week 1, 3 more carries in week 2, split the carries in week 3. You know, Jones has the edge in rushing yards because he went off for 132 in week 2. You know, targets, Jones 5, 3, 8, 12. Dillon's right there. I think they both have the same number of targets. So this is a pretty even split in this backfield. I don't have a problem starting both of them with some high level of confidence, also because they're tied to Aaron Rodgers. That tends to help. But I like this backfield a lot more than I like the New England backfield. And I'd have no problem starting Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon every week.
Yeah.
Regardless of schedule, regardless of situation, because they've both been so heavily involved in this offense on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think both of them do have an opportunity to do well. I think that Green Bay offense is just very interesting to me. Like, I really want to know where they're going, and it's been flashes of good, but then it's also been like, well, I don't know what the opposite of a flash is, but longer stretches of illumination that just hasn't been good.
Dim. It's been dim.
Like there we go. Opposite of flash would be dim, sure.
Ish.
But
that's best I can do.
Yeah. So just to highlight your point that you made about week 3 compared to the other weeks, in week 1 we saw 6 players over 30 fantasy points, and so that's using just classic PPR scoring from fantasy data. And of them, you had 1, 2, 3 wide receivers that were up there, and you had Saquon Barkley as the lone running back. So you had Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Devontae Adams all above 30 points, and really looking phenomenal. When we go to week 2 got even better in terms of fantasy production, where we saw 11 guys over 30 points. And if you have like a 30-point week, it's essentially a week winner. Like those are like 30-point weeks are phenomenal, right? And out of that bunch, you had Diggs as a wide receiver, Hill, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Garrett Wilson. Like you had just this string of wide receivers that were there. But you also had Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones up there as your two running backs. So again, this sounds great for your zero RB type of people, or really hero RB, because both Saquon Chubb and Aaron Jones were like round 2 type of running backs. But then when you get to week 3, there are only 3 people that topped 30 points: Lamar Jackson, Devonta Smith, and Khalil Herbert. And
one of those names is not like the other.
Yeah, and the next closest was Mac Hollins. He missed it by 0.04 points. So yeah, like Mac Hollins super close to getting that extra little oomph there. But week 3 was just a down week.
Just across the board.
Week
across
1 and
the
2.
board it was.
Across the board, a down week. So just highlighting that point a little bit more. We should see a bit more of a resurgence in week 4, is what I'm anticipating, is kind of a little bit of a bounce back. So as we kind of do that, let's take a look at a couple of wide receivers. Pat, is there any wide receiver that you kind of want to pinpoint?
I've been looking over the sheet here and trying to look at percent involved of the weekly offense and also PPR points, and trying to find some disparities here, some discrepancies. I mean, the biggest one to me that stands out is Deebo Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel.
I think that speaks a lot to
offense. This is more so in this sheet here. Those are his total PPR points for the week, correct? You don't split this up by rushing and receiving, right? So right now, Deebo Samuel is accounting for almost 20% of the San Francisco offense on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. He is coming in at 19.5% average, which is second only to Cooper Kupp at 19.9. But he's only scored 40.2 PPR points.
He has half as many points as Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. So Deebo Samuel, again, second highest in terms of average percent of weekly offense, but he doesn't have the PPR points. So, you asked about CMC and the usage and the points. Same question to you and Deebo Samuel. Are the points coming back or not?
I mean, I think it's easier for the points to come back for wide receivers. And I'm actually going to throw 2 more people into this conversation because I think they fit the same relative narrative.
Some other guy. We're probably all looking at the same guy.
And,
go ahead.
And it's Deebo Samuel.
Yep.
Bad offense, bad quarterback play, highly involved in the offense, but the points just aren't following it. Deontay Johnson, highly involved in the offense. He's at 18%. Yeah. He's whereas Deebo had over 20, all the way down to 13, over 20 again. Deontay's been like 19, 16, 18. He's constantly in that range where he's in that. And for a wide receiver, that's pretty good. Like Kupp is just, like 20, 20, 22, 22, 14, like being in that 15 to 20 range is pretty good for a wide receiver, right? Mm-hmm. But again, bad quarterback play, bad offense, highly involved for a wide receiver, but just not getting the points because the quarterback play is so bad. And then another one,
CeeDee Lamb,
similar situation, CeeDee Lamb,
Those
highly involved, but CeeDee Lamb is at least trending, it feels like, in the right direction.
Yeah, obviously he's
where he was week 1 was abysmal with 5 points, week 2, 15 points, week 3, 22 points. And probably should have been better in week 3 also if he didn't have one hit him directly in the chest and just bounce off of his chest. It almost looked like it hit him
in the face mask. It was so bad.
It was pretty bad. I think
all
three of
of
those in a similar spot where
they're massive. I mean, there were only 5 guys that are getting more than 18% of their 5 wide receivers that are higher than 18% average of the team's weekly offense.
Yeah,
Lamb, Johnson,
and three of them have PPR points in the 40s.
Yeah, and that's who we're talking about. Like with that level, if that usage is sustained and the points don't increase, something is horribly wrong. Yeah. Because you could make the case that all 3 of those guys are going to finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. They could potentially be top 12. I don't see anyone getting to the wide receiver 1, but they are potential, wide receiver 1s when it comes time for the end of the year.
Yeah.
With that level of usage, like you don't expect to see Cooper Kupp level points, but you definitely expect to see more than 40, 42, and 42. So
yeah,
I expect all 3. I expect with those 3 the usage to stay the same, and I expect the points to increase.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if we want to kind of quickly talk about any tight ends there. I mean, tight ends just their usage is just all over the place. And
no, so what I honestly don't even want to look.
I mean, the real thing is like Mark Andrews has been a stud. Like he's being used as the wide receiver in Baltimore. He is hands down the most involved tight end of the group. With
by a significant margin.
Yeah, 18% of Baltimore's offense, whereas you get Travis Kelce, Tyler Higbee, and Dalton Schultz all at 13%, which to me says like Higbee is a guy worth kind of like targeting. Yeah, he's only at 33 PPR points, where the other group of guys, Andrews is at 60, Kelce's at 54. Schultz only played a game and a half or a game and like a quarter or 2. But you just have this disparity in terms of usage for your tight ends. And then the last kind of ones to round out your double digit guys with, higher than an average percent of offensive 10. You have Pat Freiermuth, who again,
to be expected.
Same thing with Deontay Johnson. Like they're both of them are getting frustrated. I feel like by the lack of offense that they're actually creating there. And then Tyler Conklin, which is just a surprise that he has 11 points, 10 points, 16 points. 8% of the offense, 12% of the offense, 10% of the offense. And part of this is just the Jets are throwing it 50, 60 times a game. There's enough to go around. There's enough love for everybody to go around. And Conklin's, he's earning 10% of that offense. And so, that's a guy worth, I'm throwing him into some lineups where my tight end, I pump my tight end and I'm like, whatever. I'm not starting Cole Kmet anymore. I'm either dropping him or, stashing him super deep in my bench. I'm going to roll out Conklin until something happens.
Until he slows down.
Yeah, I'm
basically
fire him up. I'll get burned with a 0-point game, I'm sure, from Conklin at some point in the near future. I'm pretty confident that that's going to happen.
Tyler,
but I've
Conklin,
also been burned by Kmet 2 weeks in a row with his 0-point games.
Tyler Conklin, the pride of my alma mater, Central Michigan University.
There we go.
Chips.
Yeah, and then the last double-digit tight end, Zach Ertz.
I want to talk about one tight end, and only to make a little joke, because his head coach came out and said, "This isn't fantasy football. We're trying to win football games here." Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about Hugh Arthur Smith. You know what happened when your tight end had was the biggest percent of your weekly offense? Guess what happened? Seth, do you know what happened?
They did better.
They won. You know what they didn't do when they weren't targeting Kyle Pitts and he wasn't as heavily involved? They didn't win. Here's a surprise that everyone can see. You target your best player. You get him the ball. That's how you win football games. Fantasy football or not, Kyle Pitts is the best athlete, the best pass catcher on that team. To have him only be involved in 9% and then 4% of the offense in week 2 is criminal.
Yeah.
then come out with some snarky, oh, it's not fantasy football. We're trying to win. You're not trying to win if you're not trying to get him the ball.
Yeah.
Guess what? You get him the ball 14% of the time in week 3, you won the game.
Yeah.
Good things happen when you put the ball in the hands of your best players.
Yeah, and he wasn't
Rant over.
he wasn't the most involved skill player. Cordarrelle Patterson was still 31% of that offense. But this is another team where Marcus Mariota was down to 47% of that offense, which is, again, I think it's one of these situations. It's like Baker Mayfield in Carolina. And it goes to the point you were just making in response to Arthur Smith. You have to take the ball out of guys' hands that are losing you the game and put it into playmakers' hands, which your playmakers are Patterson, Pitts, and London.
Yeah.
Like get the ball in their hands and better things will happen for you.
Yeah.
But I mean that they really don't have a whole lot of other options there.
No.
But it is good to see them.
4.9% is criminal. You are not gonna win a single football game if Kyle Pitts if he's less than 5% of your weekly offense.
Yeah. And the sad part is that it still only got Pitts like 13 points, but that's more than enough to make you feel better about his.
Seth, that is triple the amount of points he scored. That is double the amount of points he scored week 1 and week 2 combined. All right. Baby steps.
Baby steps. Right. We're getting there.
All right. Because Arthur Smith is listening. So.
And if anybody out there wants to get a sense of the percent offense stuff, hit us up. Drop a comment and hit me up on Twitter. The name's on the screen at FF the At Home Dad. Go ahead, send me a DM, send me a message, whatever, which is what DM stands for, whatever. I'm young, I'm hip. Hello, fellow kids. Utes, the two Utes. All right, so we're just dating ourselves all over the place. But hit me up. We'll get you set up with access to one of this. I'm actually working on a much prettier and more useful dashboard that I want to get out there and put in people's hands that they can use. But in the meantime,
we're frantically clicking in the background, trying not to use the same sheet and mess each other up.
Mm-hmm. Which I literally created a tab that says Pat's copy.
So it says Pat copy.
But then you were using the one that wasn't.
I didn't know you did that. All right, enough. Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Oh, here we go. Oh, Rob. Thanks, guys. And my cousin Vinny. Yeah. Seth and I are old. We like the classics.
It's a great one. Kudos to you for getting the reference. The two.
All right.
Okay. All right. Ready for the fact attack? Are you ready?
Always. This guy. We're getting the fact attack queued up, and I don't know if he removed himself or what, but we've lost Seth. So I'm not going to get started. I'm going to give him a minute to get back in so we can do this. And let me see if he is. It's going to be too funny. Oh, there he is.
You didn't get any of that. I literally did the drop and everything. I think when I swiped. You know what? I'm gonna play it again anyways. Here it is.
Yeah, do it.
Just because
we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah.
Glad you're back. All right. We've scoured Twitter for your questions, and we will answer them in the next 5 minutes. Are we ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right, first question. At Joe D. Jeezy, who's the better wide receiver in a standard league for the rest of the season? Tyler Lockett or Alan Lazard? And side note, pause the clock for a second. Did you see the tweet? It was about letting Russ cook. It was just a bowl of Cheerios with 2 hot dogs in it.
Yeah, I did see that one.
That made me laugh. All right, back to the show. Better wide receiver, standard league rest of the season, Tyler Lockett or Alan Lazard? I'm going to go Alan Lazard. He's healthy. He's tied to a better quarterback. He is the clear-cut number 1 option in that offense. Give me Alan Lazard.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's coming back. He's getting almost 10% of the offense. Like, there's still room for him to grow there. But man, that Seattle offense just does not have much to get excited about. So I agree. I'm going with Lazard here as well.
I like it. Next at you want to take a shot at this one?
Labar Barra Curtis.
There you go. PPR flex. Best option: Curtis Samuel, Kareem Hunt, or Damien Pierce.
Ooh,
I wanted to loop this in because I know your fascination with Damien Pierce.
I mean, did you see his level of involvement?
I did.
I mean, it fits our show perfectly. 17% week 1, 25% week 2, 37% of the Texans offense this past week with Damien Pierce. And he went 5 points, almost 9 points, 18 points. Mm-hmm. He's moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. The one thing I did want to check, though, before answering is who the Browns are playing this week. Mm-hmm. Because Hunt is one of those types of guys. Ooh, and he's playing in Atlanta. I think I got to go Hunt here just for the sake that he could rip off a run and just completely take it to the house. Make your fantasy week in just a couple of plays. Whereas the Texans are going up against the Chargers. It's not as good a matchup.
I'm in agreement with you. It's Kareem Hunt, and this is a guy that's produced 23, 9, and 9 PPR points on roughly 20% usage. Even with Nick Chubb dominating at roughly 30% usage, Nick Chubb is still 18, 22, 22. So they're getting Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt the ball for a weekly option. I'll take Kareem Hunt out of these 3.
Yeah, and Pat, I'm going to throw Rob's question in here. Do you guys have any rules on playing players if teams have an upcoming Thursday night football game?
One, you never want to put any Thursday night players in your flex position. I feel like that's
of course.
That's of course. Mm-hmm. And as far as rules on playing players, I mean, this week, Cincinnati, Miami, Jamar Chase is a must start.
Mm-hmm.
I want to lean a little bit towards Tyler Boyd. Is trend depending on your team makeup is trending into that. I mean, T. Higgins looked dead.
Yeah,
he took a nasty shot. So really, one guy is an absolute must start, and maybe 2, maybe Tyreek, maybe Chase and Tyreek are must starts in the wide receiver spot. I don't like any Miami running backs. I don't like either quarterback this week. I don't like either tight end this week. I mean, if 2 is healthy, one hit couldn't. I mean, if you have Chase, you're playing him. If you have Hill, you're playing him. If you have Waddle, you're probably going to play him, and that's about it. Then you sort of get into that matchup or get into that like team makeup. So
yeah, and I agree with most of what you're putting out there on the specific players, and if you're looking for more general rules, not just for like this Thursday night game. I heard from somebody the other day that the Thursday night football game recently has hit the over more than the under. And so like I don't know the actual numbers backing that up. And I'd love to go back in and double check that. But I think there's no hard and fast rule for me on, what we're going to get out of a Thursday night game. Right. And so I think, that could be something where, bettors have just bet so much on the under on Thursday night games that it's driven the line down over time. But I'm not gonna sit a guy like Chase just because he's playing on Thursday night. If Tua didn't have any health issues, I'd be firing up Tua without any concerns. My biggest concern is his health issue and the quick turnaround to the Thursday game.
You didn't stop the clock, Seth? Oh,
I didn't.
This is embarrassing. All right. So, Rob, hopefully that helps you out. We don't know if you're talking this week specifically or Thursday night football in general, but this week.
And Chase, if anything, hit us up with some more questions.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Let's get back into this. I think we were here. All right. Let's knock these out real quick. At FF Tweets by Twins, PPR running back 2 spot, A.J. Dillon versus New England or Brees Hall at Pitt. Rapid fire. I'm going A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, I think so. I don't like it. I'm gonna say yes for the moment.
I'm holding you to that one. All right, at Chusin 1234, rest of the season in a redraft league, Carson Wentz or Trevor Lawrence? Rapid fire. Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say Wentz has more boom games. Wentz has more boom games. Trevor Lawrence has more points at the end of the season, but Wentz's like bad games are just so bad that he doesn't equate to what Lawrence's like easy game, like his relatively typical scoring is. But Wentz will put up a 20 plus,
a 30
25
burger,
plus,
a 30 burger, and a nothing
yeah.
burger. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Last question from at Matt Garreau 15. PPR rest of the season. Brandon Cooks or Chris Olave? This is rapid fire. Don't overthink it.
No, it's Olave.
It is.
Yeah.
The answer is always Olave.
Yeah.
Actually, almost always.
I think Cooks is down right now. Cooks is going to rebound a little bit more, and he's going to come back some. But Olave he looks like he looks the part. He's doing his job, and with any injuries happening with that New Orleans offense, like he's just looking even more and more like that dominant guy. So it's Olave, but I think Cooks he'll come back. He'll be a little bit better. And I'm changing my pick. I think I might go with Brees Hall just for the receiving upside. He was 25% of the Jets' offense in Week 3, which is surprising.
Okay, yeah,
but it's there. Okay. Like I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna say Brees because of the receiving.
All right, I don't hate it. There's some data behind it at least, and behind that data is fantasydata.com. It's all the fancy spreadsheet that Seth and I were using. Everything he put together came from fantasydata.com. You can use our promo code FAQS, FAQS, and get 20% off your subscription purchase. You can also use our code FAQS, FAQS, at underdog.com. Get a 100% deposit match for your initial deposit up to $100. Now, let's get to Rob. Appreciate the questions. Thanks so much for reaching out. Hopefully, you got a good laugh from the My Cousin Vinny reference, and we're able to help you out a little bit with your Thursday Night Football question. Please make sure you drop us a line. The show, we're at the Fantasy Facts, FAQS, on Twitter. Seth is at FF the At Home Dad. I'm at Dynasty_Pat. And with that, good night, everybody.
Catch you on the flip side.